All right, folks, welcome. Thank you for coming here. I want to introduce you to our guests here. Shane and Dave are from M&M Photography. And M&M Photography has been a staple business in Bethel Park, I believe, since 1982.
That sounds about right, yeah.
That's correct, which was before I was born, 3 years before I was born. In fact, growing up, my family had our family portraits taken at M&M. I know I had my first communion pictures taken there and my graduation pictures. And so they're the go-to photographer in Bethel Park. And they've been serving Bethel Park High School for as long as I can remember, generously taking your portraits, your class portraits, if you will. And then also you might have seen them at sporting events too. They're always there. They take all of the team pictures, all of the candids or action shots, if you will. So, we really rely on them for everything. And I don't know what we would do without them. So we are indebted to them, really. And I thought it would be a great idea to invite them in to show you some tips, tricks, and techniques for taking great photographs. And you all know we could use a little bit more practice in that area, especially those who work with the newspaper and yearbook. For those who haven't, I'd encourage you to do so. If you're not graduating this year, come back next year and take pictures for us. So thanks again for being here. We look forward to you showing us a thing or two. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. So just who here is actually on the yearbook staff taking photos?
Maybe
Just you.
Okay.
Gotcha. And what else does anybody do with photos other than your phone? Just nothing. You have a camera too?
Yeah.
What kind of camera do you have?
Canon Rebel T7.
Oh, the T7. This thing.
Cool.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. You got the kit lens that came with that too?
Yeah, and then I also have a 50 and 24.
Nice. The 1.8, 50?
Big
1.8? Yeah.
things. I'm 95% sure.
The 50s are, sorry, I get off a tangent. The 50s are nice.
Is that nice?
Right, because they're cheap. The 50s are really cheap and you can get really fat. What's called, you know what I mean by fast glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get fast glass. I mean, that's 1.8. It's nice.
Yeah.
And anytime you get a prime lens like that, it ends up being more sharp than the was up. Anyways, sorry.
You're good.
You take photos as well? What
Yeah.
kind of camera do you have?
I have a Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, very cool. All right. Do you have anything you want to start off with?
I kind of wanted to know what you guys are interested in learning. I think we've done a little bit of everything. So like a little background for background for me, I've been doing photography since the mid-90s. I've worked for M&M for about a year. I've worked in school photography about 15, 16 years, and I used to work for the newspaper in the South Hills. So candids is something I've been doing for like 20 years, at least, and we've done a little bit of everything. And I love it. I have a ball doing sports photography. So a lot of it's kind of like what questions you have. And I can show you, we have a bunch of different images. A lot of it's some stuff we did for Bethel for this year, just to show you some different ideas of like what we do and how we do it, and just kind of get into what you guys want to learn.
Yeah. I guess I should probably get my background too.
Yeah.
So, I've been doing photos since 2015. I started off as a fashion photographer, and then I got into doing business photos because the fashion scene was hard, to say the least. And then so I got into doing like business headshots and that sort of thing. And then I started a video production company. And so I did video production and photography for the last 7 years. Then I moved to Pittsburgh in October from Virginia, and then said, I think I want to get back into photography. And I saw that M&M was looking for a photographer, and so here I am. So, and I've done some fast-paced stuff with cars before, which is kind of similar to what we'll get into with sports, because things are fast-moving. You learn how to focus and have good lighting and all that sort of thing, and tell a story and all that. But sports stuff I'd never done until I got with M&M, and I love it. So it's really, really fun, and it challenges you just a little bit. So any thoughts before we even get into things of something you might have on your mind that you would want to know, and then we'll get right into it. Yes?
Will this cover 35 millimeter YouTube film as well?
Yeah, I mean, the same concepts apply. You just don't get as many chances, right? You know what I mean? It's like you get, well, how many images are on them? And you'd be like, some of them have 28, some of them have 30. I mean, it ranges, right, which film you get.
Yeah.
But the same concept is there, right, depending on what you're photographing. Like, let's start with this. Is everybody familiar with the big three, ISO, shutter, and f-stop? Does everybody have a general understanding, right?
Yeah, just don't want to open.
Yeah. So ISO is controlling the amount of light that's coming,
Yeah,
so we'll just get this out of the way. ISO controls the amount of light that comes into the camera, right? ISO is one half of controlling what we call ambient light, just the natural light that's in the room, right? Then shutter speed is how quickly we're capturing that and closing in and out, right? And then f-stop is how much light we let in, right? So f-stop is the number one for controlling how much ambient light we're letting in. Then when you get into like strobes and off-camera flashes and that sort of thing, then those parameters change a little bit, right? But the same applies whether it's film or digital. Just digital, you can take thousands of images, and film has to be more selective, right? But the same thing is, like I have a film camera that has a 7200 2.8 lens. That's a really fast lens. Same concept applies with that as it does with my digital Sony camera, right? Or our Canon camera, it's like same thing. And nowadays, it's interesting that people are going back to the old vintage cameras now. Do you have a vintage camera?
Yeah, XTR 201.
Nice. I have an X700. It's my old vintage camera. It was my dad's Canon. So yeah, that's what we'll get into when we talk about photographing fast-moving subjects. Same thing. Doesn't matter, old camera, new camera. Same thing, right? So before we get into that, you had a question as well?
No, I was just searching.
Okay. All right. Cool. Anybody else before we? Yeah.
And is there any point in time that you'll be like talking about like any like photo settings like
Photo settings.
for like if you don't have like a program
Yeah. Absolutely.
like of how you can like do like a retro a filter or something of like different type of filters on your own.
Yeah. Now, are you talking about filters that you actually put on the camera, or filters you apply at?
You apply it on like on phones.
Yeah. So you talk about filters you would apply like in post editing?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, the filters ends up being just whatever style of photo you want it to be at the end, right? The most important thing is, do we have a good usable image to start with? And then you can apply all the other stuff, right? The difference in someone like us, it's in a, we'll call it volume photography business, is we're shooting tons of photos. I mean, how many photos do you shoot on a candid night?
At least 300.
300 photos.
At least
right?
300 or 400, yeah.
So, like, post-editing for us isn't real like to go in there and apply cool filters and spend a bunch of time editing, like that sort of thing. We don't have the luxury to do that because we have to film that job and then put that job out in 2 or 3 days, right? But the point is we could, because we have good usable images to start with, right? We have an image that's in focus, hopefully, and what we'll get into with sports stuff specifically is you don't always get it in focus, but hopefully you have good in-focus images, at least good composition-wise, that we can get into. And then from there, you can do whatever you want to. I get lost for hours editing the style of the photo, right? Where you talk about the style of the photo, after the fact. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. All right, Dave, you want to?
Having trouble.
Yeah, we're trying to get the images up.
Yeah, sure.
Not. Coming up.
So specifically with what you're using for, tell me your name again. Ellie?
Allie.
Say it again.
Allie.
Allie? So specifically with what y'all are using, Allie, like, here's the deal. So, and Dave can get more into the technical side of things, but really all you need is two lenses.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much. I
For
mean, yeah, you
sports,
can
a lot
get
of the
into it.
sports, I use the long lens.
Yeah.
The 70-200?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, mostly.
yeah. You gotta think two things. one, we can only be in certain spots while you're photographing. Like if you're on basketball, you're either at one end of the court or you're right in the center. Football, you're like in the end zone. Maybe you'd be in the sideline.
I'm on used to sidelines.
Right.
Yeah, because like it depends on the sport. Like football, sidelines you're gonna have better light because the lights are coming from the sides. When you
Right.
get into and you want to use natural light as much as possible. So
Yeah.
when you get into the end zone, you're starting into getting into a dead zone of no light. So for me, it's always sidelines at least about 10 yards ahead of their action. And with any sport, you want to put yourself in a spot where the action is coming to you. And also be careful with like where you stand so you're not going to get run over. But yeah, for the basketball, like it depends on each one. Football, I'm usually on the sidelines, and I'll get pictures of the players on the side as they're lining up for their each down, and then I'll follow the ball. Like I'll follow the ball wherever it's going, and then like in any like crowd activity, that kind of thing. And that's always like highest ISO, at least 1,000 ISO or higher. And then I'll usually use this what's called shutter priority, where you're controlling the shutter on the camera and it controls the aperture. Like in a football game, the aperture is usually going to be very open. If you guys understand how the aperture works, like 2.8 means it's letting a lot of light in. Like 22 is a very little bit of light. Usually it's going to be open like 2.8 or so. And you want your shutter for photographing action, really the slowest you can do is 2/50th of a second. The higher is always better. Like during the daytime or evening, whenever you have sunlight out, you can photograph at like 1,000th of a second. That way you're freezing that that athlete and whatever is going on in that action. 250 and below you'll start to get blur. So you want to get higher than that as much as you can. At night, you tend to not to be able. There you go.
Well, I'm gonna have to use our gallery that Eminence.
Oh, okay, well that works. Yeah,
it's
it's all the same.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. A lot of it's the same stuff. So yeah.
So that'll work.
Okay, that'll work.
Yeah, so you know that the higher the f-stop, when you get to like f22, it also controls the depth of field of what's in focus, right? So f22, very little light, but everything pretty much is in focus at f22. The lower you go, and you get down to like, these are like 3.5, right? If you open these up all the way to 3.5, you'll get a shorter depth of field. Where it changes a lot is, if I'm here and shooting you and I'm at 3.5, then more than likely my depth of field is like here, right? But if I'm 20 yards away from you, now that depth of field widens out because of the distance, right? So you can get a little bit, what we could call background separation, right? Like here, you can see this is a little bit blurry in the background, separating this player from that background. Make sense? You got it? Most of the time, you're going to end up in low light situations inside the gym, even though it looks bright in there. When you go to photograph, kind of dark, actually, right? The good thing about inside stuff is you get a lot of overhead lights, right? Which is good because now you have basically a blanket of light that comes from overhead. The difference is when you get on the football field, you basically have just one main set of lights that are on one side of the field. It's always the rule of thumb, and David could probably attest to this. If you don't want to shoot directly into the light because you can possibly get lens flare from the lights into the camera. But backlighting a subject is also pretty interesting, right? It makes it a little bit more dramatic, which works for sports. So you can even see the light. You can see how this part is brighter, and this part is brighter, right? And you have light up here. You see how the top of the arms are bright, so you have all that overhead lighting hitting there, right? Which is nice. It's nice. Because you get kind of a flat light over everything for the inside. Yeah. So shutter speed, yeah, you want a higher shutter speed because you want to. This is a perfect example. Freezes him, but because of that shallow depth of field, I'm guessing 2.8. This person's out of focus and this person's in focus. Does that make sense? Because if you were shooting at F5.6, then everything would be in focus, and as a viewer, it'd be hard to, hey, how you doing? As a viewer, it'd be hard to recognize who is the one that we're focusing on here. Is it this person that's defending, or is it this person with the ball? And you want it to be this person is the one that we're have attention on. So that's where that shallow depth of focus comes in handy. The good thing is, and Dave can probably tell you this too, is even at 3.5, you might think, oh, we only have a 3.5 lens, 7200. But the further you get out, you are going to get some blurriness, right? Some bokeh in the background, just because of the length of the lens. But yeah, typically lens-wise, you want a lens that can get into the action, so 70 to 200. So when you're on one side of the court or one side of the field, or you're on the 20-yard line and all of a sudden they make a break for it and you need to get in there close with the camera, then a 7200 does really well for that. But then when they get in close, having like a wide shot, like a 15 to 35, a 15 to 55, 17 to 55, or right, and this is 15 to 18 to 55, that's really good for these wide, what we call establishing shots, so you can kind of get a full picture, right? Pictures like, like these, really nice for the long lens, right? This person is obviously the person that we're focusing on in the image, right? This was the one that's telling the story. And then stuff like this, like even though we're obviously here on this person, it will also be nice to switch over to a wide lens, and now you get a full, what we call an establishing shot, where you get everybody, the entire band and stadium and lights and all of that, right? That also tells a good picture, or tells a good story, right? Anything else on that?
Also, too, when I photograph too, is I tend to think of the medium that we're photographing for. So for the yearbook, you're trying to get as many as you can. And for me, it's getting like the being tight enough that you can see the faces. Because like I love the establishing shots, and it's really cool. But also you have to think. I always think newspaper-wise, is that you have only so much space that you can put in, and like for a yearbook, you only have so much space in the yearbook. So you want to make sure your pictures are nice and tight on that athlete or that person, so you can see them, but still getting composition, so you're still getting like an artistic viewpoint to it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And compositionally wise, since Dave mentioned that, this is, go scroll up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, go back to this. Right there. So this is nice in the center, where you think composition, you're right. I always think, heard of rule of thirds. Yeah, everybody with me, rule of thirds? Yeah, so dividing the scene into threes. So this person directly centers. Traditionally, from a compositional standpoint, that's kind of boring. But for this, it works, right? Because she's in white, everybody else is in black and orange. She's also vertical in the scene, and therefore that works for that image, right? If this is a wider shot, I would probably push her to the left, and therefore you see more of the band behind her. Does that make sense from a compositional standpoint? Yeah.
Well, whatever I do, like for that, same for like when you do yearbook, I'll focus on one person, do a few. I try to get as many kids as I can. So I'll do like a couple of things on each individual person, and then move on to the next one. Like do some of the instruments, and then do some of the cheers and some of the Bethettes, and try to get as many as I can, so the school has a lot of options for what to put in.
Yeah. And on that note too, when you think about out at games, baseball games, football, it doesn't matter what sport it is, you can think about before the game, during the game, and after the game, the shots that you would get, right, for each one. So before the game, you can go into the locker room, or them practicing, or getting amped up, or talk to the coaches, or coming into the field, right? Those are all shots, like running onto the field, or high-fiving people, or those are all shots you can get ahead of time. You can also get fans ahead of time, right? So pictures of fans is good to get ahead of time, right? Because everybody's amped up for the games, that sort of thing. Then obviously during the game, you're getting action shots during the game. And something to think about during the game is, if you're going to be there for the entire time, think about getting each individual position on the field, and then getting wide shots and running shots and tackling shots or shooting shots or whatever that is, right? Basically just all action shots. So that way, by the end of the game, you've got every single player on the team that's played, and you've got an action shots of all those too that they can put in the yearbook. Yeah. And then post game, obviously, hopefully we win, right? And then you get shots of everybody high-fiving and the fans going crazy and that sort of thing, right? So think about it as a story from beginning to end. How are we telling the story? Okay, the beginning is the players are getting ready in the locker room. Then they have a great touchdown pass in the end zone, and then afterwards you're getting everybody celebrating. So now we have a through line of stories that hopefully you could put in the yearbook, right?
Another thing to think about too is always think about your different angles. I think like you referenced a wide angle. It's like you don't always have to be standing. Like if you're getting want to get pictures of the band while they're playing during the game, go up in the stands and get like a low angle looking up at them, like where you're right in front of them, where it kind of gives them a pretty neat story view. Or if one of the players are on the bench and they're having a hard time, you're telling a story of emotion. And you want to always tell like the good side of it, but sometimes you have struggle in games that gives you like a really neat memory or a different focus where you can get somebody on the bench with a wide angle where you get kind of more of a dramatic view of them.
Yeah, it's good to keep eyes open everywhere, right? Especially like, there's two brothers that are on the team together, they're sitting on the sidelines, hanging out, like, that's obviously good, especially for a yearbook where you're like, so-and-so sitting on the sideline, getting ready to, you know what I mean, so, yeah.
And then switch to a different sport. I'll switch to one of my favorites.
What is that?
Swimming.
That's always the tricky one.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big thing with swimming, again, it's getting yourself in a position where you can get faces. So you really have to just get used to, like whenever they're doing like their freestyle, you have to be on the side of the pole. You just gotta wait. And that's because sometimes you'll have a student, like an athlete, will only take a breath on one side, and so you kind of get just nothing. So you really just have to be patient, wait for their head to come up. I always find the breaststroke and the butterfly the easier ones because you can go to the end and they'll pop up and down, but you still have to take practice where you have to get used to anticipating when they're going to come out of the water. But that's another one where like getting a lot of stuff on the side, if like there's kids cheering on, if like you have a meet against like a really good competitive team, you'll get kids cheering on the side. I know there's the one, I forget whichever event it is, that it's like they go across like 36 times. You always have kids at the end cheering them on. So that's where you'll get a lot of good interactive. And plus the slower events are good for freestyle because they're not going to be going as fast and you'll be able to get your pace. And you literally just have to follow them along on the side and just wait for their heads to pop up. Yeah. That's a nice one because you get a faster shutter speed. You get a neat, more dramatic because you get the water frozen and the athlete frozen.
Yeah, that's especially important for those higher shutter speeds, freeze that action. So let's, I guess, quickly just run down like, what are the general settings you would want if you were to go out and photograph something like this? Generally, no less than 250, right? Especially for something like this, I would just, here it's called TV on Canon cameras. Other cameras, it's just shutter priority. Normally it's an S that's on the top. At the very minimum, I would just put it on that, which means it's telling the camera the shutter is the most important thing. I want the shutter at 400th of a shutter speed, so that I know that I'm freezing action, and the camera can figure out ISO and f-stop, right? At the very least, that's a great place to just start. You do want to eventually get into using manual because let's say, remember that shot of the basketball player was coming around and they had the other team in blue was in front that I showed you, and that person in blue was blurred out, and then we were focused on the basketball player. Something that can't happen in shutter, say we're on 400 for shutter, we're at 1250 ISO, but it puts the f-stop at like 7 for some reason. Now everything's in focus. So now you've not necessarily lost the shot, but you're at a position where this could have been so much of a better photo if that person was out of focus. So, but for now, you can just start with shutter priority, and then once you feel comfortable with that, when you go into editing and you look at the data from it, you can see, okay, this shot was at 400th of a shutter speed at 1250 ISO at f5.6, right? Okay, so these things are, and actually I think will tell you, doesn't it tell you too lens length that you're at.
To use the betcha.
Yeah, so you'll be able to see, okay, it was at 85 millimeters, right? So then you can start to figure out as you go through all the photos, oh, okay, this photo looks like this with these parameters of the camera, right? So then you can, okay, so if I switch to manual and did the exact same parameters, which is the same that you could do on the vintage stuff too, you could like, oh, okay, these are the parameters from this, and then you can play with that from a vintage, from a manual camera standpoint, right? But yeah, try to get into manual, because ultimately you want control of the camera. You don't want the camera controlling what you do. I want to tell the camera, this is the type of photo that I want to create. And these lenses are fine for now. Would it be better if you had 2.8? Yes. I always tell people that are buying camera stuff, buy the best, cheapest camera body that you can buy, and spend your money in glass, spend your money in lenses. And there's tons of places where you can get cheap used lenses. You need to clean your lens there.
Oh, yeah, they get scuffed up quite a bit.
Yeah.
But first,
And,
as a starter, that lens is still good for
It's not bad.
anything outside born today.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's whenever you get into the night and the indoor stuff is whenever you start needing that.
Yeah. So here's the issue with the older cameras, like, and especially the kit lenses. So don't take what I'm about to say as a bad thing. This is a good place to start, okay? But typically, these kit lenses are not great. They're just not good glass. I mean, you can even, it rattles, right?
Probably to drop the feet sometimes.
Ugh,
Right,
you're like,
yeah.
mine, yeah. I literally have a lens that's broken right now because of that.
Also a filter. It's good to
A
have
filter would be nice.
a protective filter, because I have the lens I'm using. I have a replacement filter because it got cracked. Because
Yeah.
you're gonna have, listen, you
Yeah.
always be careful where you're at. Something's gonna hit you eventually.
Eventually.
I think I had a baseball or something hit the lens where it'll take out the filter, but the lens is still there.
It actually
Yeah.
happened to us more than once.
Yeah.
Has it?
In fact, this year I've taken off a couple filter because they
Yeah.
were dropped and they cracked.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
luckily the lens underneath was fine.
Yeah. Here's another safety thing, and also, I don't know if you do this when shooting, but I used to do this with car stuff. But they sell like shoulder straps where you can strap in both two cameras, right? So they make some. I have one that's just a single strap that just goes on like a messenger bag kind of thing, and it has like a where you would normally click this in right here. It has a piece that just clips into to the sling. But they make slings with two attachments, right? Which is good at a sports game, because on one you can have your 7200, on your second camera can have the wide lens, and that way this goes down, this wide lens comes up, right? You're down the field, the action's moving really fast towards you, so your 7200 way away, they're moving really quick, this goes down, this one comes up, and I'm wide on this one, right? Also, safety-wise, it's always good to have this attached to you.
I wrap it around my hand.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Because when you're on, especially football, right? When you're on a football field and you have a huge player or three that are running towards you, and you
Sometimes
have to
you're
throw that
really
camera
close
down. You want it to be attached to you. I'm sure Dave would say you want to make sure you can grab this and
Just
run
run
off
out of the
or
way. Yeah.
fall out of the way,
Yeah.
and still have that camera protected. So just a safety feature.
The process
Definitely
of having
employed
that too,
on
where
that.
you don't realize how close they are to you, and it's like, oh, they're a lot closer.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you're 7200, and you're like, oh, but yeah, camera settings wise, that's where I would start, is at least 250, 300. You know you're gonna be really high ISO, because more than likely, when you're in the middle of the day outside, it's gonna be dark, right? And you're gonna need to bump up that ISO to raise that ambient light. The issue that you run into a lot with these older lenses is you end up with noise, right? So like grainy images, right? Which stylistically is cool, but not from a sports standpoint. Like we don't want grainy images. So that is one of the things with what's called faster glass at 2.8, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you ever see?
You'll get less grainy images.
Yeah, because I know we have one, but there's also, you ever see those huge ones, like on sporting events, like on TV, where they have this huge. That's like, that's always like the
Yeah.
holy grail of lenses.
Yeah.
Because you can do anything with that, and you have a lot of latitude of what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do they require you to use Canon?
No, they don't. No.
No?
No, we can use whatever we.
So, nowadays, everything's so cheap. I mean, I have a Sony a6400 that's been my workhorse camera for 6 years now. It's an APS-C, it's not full frame, it's just a regular APS-C sensor camera, but you can buy them for $400. They're 24 millimeter. Sony is known to be fantastic in low light conditions. So yeah, I mean, you can buy those super cheap, and they make adapters for Canon lenses. So keep that in mind as maybe an upgrade, especially the mirrorless. The mirrorless are really typically light, just like these are. Sony lenses are super expensive. I wouldn't go that route unless you really want to. But we use all Canon at the shop, and we have everything from 5D, like the originals 5Ds, the
60s, yeah, those are the two workhorses. 5D.
We just got a new mirrorless camera, Canon camera, that's pretty sweet. I think it's tack sharp and has all kinds of like focus and stuff, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, what do you guys use for editing photos?
Lightroom.
Oh, Photoshop and Lightroom? Yeah,
Yeah,
Photoshop too? Yeah.
Yeah, watch.
Yeah, very cool. Do you take them, what is the product, you normally take them into Lightroom, and then if you need to tweak it, you go into Photoshop?
Well, I just take photos and then the camera can't do everything great.
Right.
It's auto, it's a phone, it is AI. I usually just go in Camera Raw. They have this thing called, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's like, allows you to change a lot of stuff like exposure, saturation,
Yeah.
color grade, and I usually just adjust the settings so it looks right.
Yeah. If you have a lot of photos, Lightroom is a great option to bring it in the beginning, because you can batch edit a photo, right? If you like, we're in a basketball game or a swim meet or something, and you have 200 photos, and you look at them and go, oh my gosh, they're all kind of dark. They all need to be bumped up in exposure. You literally just highlight all of them, and then up the exposure for every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you guys, when you shoot cameras, what's the file type it uses as like a default one?
JPEGs.
For sports, yeah.
For sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do the large just to make sure they're clean.
Yeah.
But yeah, because we're not making huge prints, because we're going for yearbook.
Yeah.
The format's not going to be huge.
Right.
You can get what you need out of a JPEG.
Also for file size, right? I mean, we
Right.
have 300-400 images, and we've shot 4 teams in a week. Now we have thousands of images. Raw photos, although would be great for editing, not so great for file management.
Yeah. You ever heard of the RAW format?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys ever use that?
Yeah, we use RAW sometimes. Yeah. I come from a background of only using RAW. When I got here, I was like, you guys use JPEG? Why? They're like, well, we got thousands of photos every single week. It's kind of hard to manage. From a file data standpoint, right, we'd have to have terabytes and terabytes of hard drives to manage all of that. Plus, with the workflow, we need to put out things quickly. So a JPEG image actually seems to be better because that allows us to put the image out quicker and edit it quicker. There are disadvantages to that when you get into, say, senior photos. We wouldn't do that, like if we do a senior session, we would do RAW. Right? We wouldn't want to do a JPEG all the time. Right, exactly. Right, yeah. And the JPEG settings that we use for doing sports is typically the large JPEG setting in the camera, and then because you can go in and change the parameters of the JPEG setting. So we typically add sharpness to it, because we've noticed that it ends up being a little bit soft at the end. We add sharpness to it, and we add a little bit of contrast to it. So then when it comes into the editing software, it's already ready to go. Quick question, because I never get right in yet.
Is there any other sites or apps that you do not recommend to people?
For what?
For like you said, for editing, for the exposure,
Yeah, I mean, Lightroom and Adobe are pretty much the industry standard for that. They seem to have the best parameters. And as much as they've upgraded over the years as far as what they're putting into their programs, especially with the new generative AI that's in Photoshop is just ridiculous how good that is.
Yeah, you know, like really big file sizes?
Yeah.
And how, let me do this, because I use really big file sizes.
Yeah.
Because I shoot them like pretty big megapixels.
Yeah,
And I put the images in Photoshop and it maxes out the memory because of how big the file size is.
yeah,
But it looks so good.
yeah.
So
Well,
it kind of
that's
makes it
the-
worth it.
That's the trade-off, right? You have raw images are gonna be a much bigger file than JPEG images, but the trade-off is, yeah, you run through that file. Yeah, I have like a 5 terabyte hard drive just for photos.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Well,
thanks. Yeah.
unfortunately, we're out of time, but we want to thank Shane and Dave for their time. We learned a lot, and we'll have to invite you guys back.
Yeah, absolutely.